Okay, so some of the data here from a group of bulls from the St. Croix Valley Bull Test, which UWRF hosts out at Farm 2 every year, is printed in this spreadsheet. This data is probably 5-6 years old now, but it illustrates the points we're going to make. So what we have here in column A are identification numbers for the bulls, and in column B is the weight, the bulls' weights when they came to the station in October, and in column C is the weights when we took them off test in March of the following year. So we're going to start out here doing some basic things in Excel. So one of the first things we want to do, and I always expect you to do, is to label your columns. Put in column headers so we know what the data in each column is. So we're going to insert a row here, and so I'm going to get my cursor out here in the row number, and you see the little black arrow appears, and I'm going to click, which will highlight that entire row. And then we're going to right click, and I'm going to select Insert. Whenever you insert a row, the rows will always be inserted above the location you're at. When you insert columns, they'll always be inserted to the left of the location you're at. So for example, we could highlight column A in the same fashion, right click, say Insert, and we get a column to the left. Let me go back here to the row. I'm going to highlight it and right click and delete it, in which case it disappears and everything in this case automatically moves up. Sometimes Excel will ask you which way you want it to move. But we could go to work and highlight two rows and right click and insert, and then it will in fact insert two rows. And so it's very easy to insert columns or rows wherever you happen to need them. Again, remember, rows always are inserted above your location and columns always to the left of your location. Well, let's go to work here and highlight row 2. We'll come back to row 1 later. Let's highlight row 2. We're going to format row 2 next. And so for column headers, I would prefer that you follow this same pattern that I'm going to illustrate here. So we're going to go to the Home menu. I want the column headers to be in bold font. So we're going to click the bold, and when I have the whole row highlighted, it's going to bold every cell in that row. I also would like the column headers to be centered, so we're going to click the centering icon here. And finally, I want the text to wrap, so that all the text will fit into the cell rather than extending to the right into adjacent cells. So bold, center, and wrap are three things we want to do. So let's go back down here and click a cell then in row 2B, or B2 I should say, cell B2, and we're going to enter the headers. So this column is bull ID. The next column is initial weight, and see how the text wraps. And by the way, in moving to the next cell, I'm just using the right arrow key on my keyboard. And then column D is final weight. And then I can arrow out of that, either going back to the left or to the right or down. You can also leave cells by hitting enter, which always takes you down. Okay, so we have those columns labeled then. Actually, we don't need column A, so let's get rid of that. We're going to insert another column in a minute though, so I'm going to delete column A. The next thing we're going to do is add some additional data that's not here. And so when we add data, we, just like we did for the column headers, we're going to type the numbers or the text into each cell and then use arrow keys to either move left or right or up or down depending on what direction we're entering data, and usually downward or to the right is most typical. So you can just use arrow keys to move. And so I'm going to show you another sheet here now, and you can enter the data that's highlighted here in green into your spreadsheet. So let's go back and do that. Oh, and you see when I do that, I get something goofy in my cell. I typed in 1-6 and I end up with a 42,010. And that's because Excel thinks that I was trying to send it or give it a date. And I wasn't trying to give it a date. I want Excel to reproduce precisely what I typed into the cell. So in order to deal with that problem, we're going to go back here to the Home tab, and we're going to go over here to the Format button, click the down arrow, go way to the bottom of that menu and click on Format Cells. And the first tab here says Number. We want to format our cell, in this case, to text. Whenever you have a cells formatted as text, Excel will print into that cell exactly what you type, no matter what it is. And in this case, that's what we want to do. Because even though we're using numbers, these are really names, and we want 1-6 there. Okay, so we're going to say OK and format all three of these cells then as text. And then we're going to go in and re-enter our 1-6. And you see it's days. We also need to center these cells. So let's do that. There we go. Let me go back and pick up the rest of my data. 31-4, 2-1, and then we need the weights. Whoops. And then the final weights. Okay, again, we want these cells to be centered, so let's do that. In fact, this whole column is not centered, so let's do that. There we go. Okay, so now we have all our data from each animal entered in terms of ID and initial and final weight. The next thing I want to do is insert a column and add in the breed for each of these animals. So we're going to actually put that column between ID and initial weight. So we're going to click on column B, right click, say Insert, put in the header, and then what I would like you to do is I'll leave this Excel file on the screen here for a bit, and you can type in these breeds. So for example, there's an easy way to do this, and let me illustrate that. We'll go back here, so let's type in Red Angus. Notice that barely fits. It'd be nice to have our column a bit wider, so we can go up here and move the cursor till we get the double-ended arrow, press the mouse button, the left one, and drag our column a bit and make it a little wider. So it's very easy to vary column widths or row heights by doing that in Excel. And then once we have this Red Angus entered in here, we can click on it, right click, say copy, and then go down here and highlight those two cells because they're both Red Angus, paste. And here's another Red Angus, and we'll paste that one. And there's another one down here, and we'll paste it in there. So we have all the Red Angus entered. And then we need to, all the rest of them are Angus, so let's go back and do those. So we'll type in Angus once. Come back to the cell, copy it, and then paste it into all the cells that are Angus cattle. Notice I can, notice I can do multiple cells at once here very easily. Okay, so now we've got all our breed data entered as well. So I would urge you to pause the video at this point and take some time on an Excel sheet that you have running on the side to catch up and get all this data entered, and then we'll move forward and explore some other capabilities that Excel has.